Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, so it is 6:32 p.m. and I'm calling the meeting, special council meeting to order on April 7th. And I'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is declaration of interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody have pecuniary interest or otherwise they need to declare? Seeing none, and nobody's put their hand up, which is something you can do on the side of the chat. We'll move forward with the purpose of the meeting. As far as the residents update and high water, the senior management team put out a press release recently in regards to sandbags and what is being offered again as potential protection for those whose residences are on the St. Lawrence River. The projections for this coming spring remain high, although thankfully because of the lack of precipitation over the winter and the lack of precipitation this spring, we are grateful that it's not over and above what average rainfall and snowfall is. So we are still bracing for high water similar to last year, if not somewhat higher. We are closely monitoring the situation. The IJC, I believe a number of the councillors were on the IJC webinar that was last Friday, if that's correct. So that was somewhat informative from the point of view that obviously the Great Lakes Active Management Group is being convened. They are looking at Plan 2014, although we won't see the benefits of that anytime soon, I don't believe. If there's any of the councillors who were on that webinar, I had a scheduling conflict. If you'd like to add anything to that.
Only a different day.
Sorry?
It was basically the same thing, only a different day.
Okay.
There was no really news.
Okay. So there's nothing else to add unless somebody wants to put their hand up, or Mr. Goheen, if you'd like to speak to anything that we're doing from the operations side of things.
Your Worship, hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, so we've established our two sandbag filling stations. So at the township office, as well as at Narrows Lane Road, and we are pursuing another location on the southwestern corner of the municipality as well. Maybe Clark's Marina or even the Bay St. Lawrence Park, but we did hear after last year that there was a need or desire for another filling station on the southwest corner, and we're pursuing that. And when we have that location secured, we'll communicate that out in the next release and through our regular channels.
Are there any questions for the director? Seeing none, we'll move on to the departmental reports, COVID-19 response. Acting CEO, would you like to speak to the report in general, and then we can entertain specifics from the respective directors?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Grell had a question.
Oh, I apologize.
I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes. It was more a statement regarding the St. Lawrence River. There's quite a bit of, or at least in my mind, there's quite a bit of confusion. And this is more just a statement. You may have read that Transport Canada changed the commercial vessels over 12 people are now forbidden from operation until the end of June 30th. But it goes on to say, in the exceptions, it says that pleasure craft are exempt. The confusion therefore rises with residents on the water because there is a presence of the RCMP out there. and we're not certain what precisely they are enforcing. Again, we appreciate these are single folks out there. Maybe some are doing some work. Maybe non-essential work is the issue. I'm not sure, but I don't know what the RCMP would be enforcing. And I heard from one resident that it was pretty tough. And I don't know who to get that answer from. I just throw it at you, Mayor, because we are not getting, at least I don't believe on the St. Lawrence River so far, I don't see that the summertime seasonal residents are out there, but there are legitimate work boats. There are legitimate residents who have a year-round home out there. And I really don't want to, I'd like to be able to tell them what it is that is correct. On the American waters, the CB Customs Border Patrol states that any small craft is deemed non-essential. Therefore, it is restricted. That's in the American waters. It does not say the same from Transport Canada in that report that was released the 5th of April. That's my statement. I don't know what to do with that. Perhaps we could have someone phone the RCMP or have maybe Steve Clark or Mike Barrett could look into that to us for us. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Brock. That is a very good point. I had heard of a similar situation where someone was out in a pleasure craft fishing on the river on the weekend and was pulled over by RCMP asking what they're doing, that sort of thing. So very much, that's an easy call to make to the MP. Also, I'd just like to add that the direction that we received from council in regards to reaching out to Minister Garneau, that letter did go as requested. So just a point of clarification. But I did look up trying to figure out who our local RCMP contact would be. And I did speak with Sergeant Josh Kingsley today from the OPP, and hopefully we're going to get a contact in regards to who they deal with locally with the RCMP, and maybe we can get to the bottom of it. But I do appreciate the clarity that they have on the other side of the river, and we should ask for the same. So duly noted. Now we'll move forward with the departmental reports, and we'll ask the CAO to give a brief overview. Oh, sorry. Jeff, the Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you. I have had several conversations with the police chief in Gananoque, who actually told me the first day when the RCMP were in town. And in fact, I went down to the waterfront and have been along the parkway every day. They are there. They are on the water. They are on land. They're undercover. They are everywhere. It's due to the fact that, a lot of rhetoric, but possibility that Americans are trying to flee to Canada. So that's part of what I understand is the issue. So whatever we can do, we might be able to reach out even more local than the actual RCMP themselves and start that step. I'm sure the OPP may or may not cooperate, but there may be somebody who will.
Okay, duly noted. It's on the list for contact, and we'll reach out to other local law enforcement agencies and see if there's any clarification in regards to that. But I think the specific question that Councillor Gorell was looking for was whether or not small watercraft are allowed to be on the river. And I understand there's an enforcement issue with potential, because it's the largest undefended border in the world. So we should get some clarification on both ones. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Lackey. Any further questions in regards to high water? Seeing none, I will move forward with the agenda in the departmental report. So CAO Potter, would you like to speak to this?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor had another question.
Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, Your Worship, just to go back to the previous point, I always have lunch down on the river. There are lots of pleasure boats out there. Well,
Well, it ended, yeah. So just bear with me till I can. Yes, we got kicked out. We all did. Yeah, it ended the meeting for whatever reason. See if I can. The meeting's supposed to start at 6. But I was logged in. Yeah. For hours. Yeah. So let me retry it. Yeah, just give me a sec. We are in Eastern Standard Time, right? I linked mine to hers, so it's supposed to be the same. Jeff, can you just turn that camera off? The switch on the side.
left-hand part of their screen, and a thing should pop up, and if you could mute yourselves for the time being so we don't have any echo feedback. Thank you. Should save everybody's ears.
I gotta look for how to change the chair. Vanessa, how does that affect you running the meeting?
Arnie, if you click on my name, you should be able to either host or make me co-host under.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
So Vanessa Latimer is the host now. Okay, we're back on board here. So if Vanessa, you want to mute everybody so we don't get any feedback, make sure, including Marnie. I'm unmuted. Okay. So I don't really know where to leave off. Well, I do know where we left off. And where we were in the agenda was the departmental report, and we had asked the CAO to give an update in a general fashion, and then any specific questions could be directed to the respective director depending on the department. So, Mr. CAO, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, you can all hear me. I will keep it very short, and as the mayor, and through you, Madam Mayor, to council, if you have questions of the departmental reports, the directors are on at the meeting. I just wanted to say quite quickly that, as you can see from the report and the departmental reports, we have been busier. We are busier than we ever have been. I know some of us are working 11 and 12-hour days from talking to directors to get work done, continue with their current services, and to respond to this crisis. And we have been, as I say, ahead of the pace or at a level exceeding other comparable municipalities. I've been in touch with CAOs. We've been working together on what we've been doing. But within 3 days, we anticipated things getting worse, unfortunately, but we were right. We closed the office. We got everybody home who could be home, working remotely, and we are well positioned to move forward from here. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Vanessa, I just want to double check before we go any further. Are we recording the meeting on Zoom?
We are recording and we are live streaming as well.
Okay, I just wanted to double check before we go any further in the meeting. So, councillors, you have before you the departmental report. Is there any questions in regards to this report? Councillor.
Hi. Unfortunately, I haven't had a large. Let me just see if we turn it down. Not a long time to actually read it, so it has been difficult to really come up with the answers since it just came out today. No. Sorry. No.
What if you find me here? Okay, now try speaking into your. No, turn your council mic on.
Hello, can anybody hear me now? Hello? Anybody hear me?
Hello, hello, hello. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Fine.
Unfortunately, I can't hear what Councillor Maybe is saying when he's speaking.
Try Terry.
Okay, Terry, would you like to speak, and then maybe we'll...
Unmute.
Am I okay? Still a feedback. There's still a lot of reverb.
If Councillor Maybe moved to the other side of the table, away from that side, would that have any help? Would that be any different?
That's where you were.
Yeah.
Oh, Kim Goodman has said that if Brian would like to use her office, we could move him over there. Would that be acceptable to everyone? We'll just take a short recess to get that sorted.
Terry just needs
Hello. Hello? Okay, I'm getting some thumbs up. What I was going to say before is that this report had only gotten to us today, at least for myself. So reading the whole report was a little difficult to come up with a few things. But certainly, this particular report, maybe we need to bring it back for next week.
So, Councillor, maybe you asked your question, and was there a specific director you were speaking to? Sorry,
Yes.
I was...
2 seconds here.
Okay, so...
Sorry, I think my question, or what I had said, Madam Mayor, is that this report has only just come to us today. So to actually, for us who work, to actually read this report and have some questions or any conversation about it does make it a little difficult. So I'm wondering if we could bring this one back for next week.
Sure, it's just for information anyways. I don't think there was any action out of it, just to give more of a feel for what the directors have been doing over the past 2 to 3 weeks since the state of emergency was declared. But if you have questions about the report, we can absolutely discuss it at next week's meeting.
Just as a follow-up, if I have any questions after reading it thoroughly, can we bring it back next week then?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would encourage you to reach out to the respective directors as well if you have a question specific to an area, to get any clarification in the meantime as well. You don't have to wait till then.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we have too much room.
Maybe
Switch thoughts?
Terry, would you like to go into Ms. Goodman's office to remove yourself from the, and then we can hear you speak?
Madam Mayor, in the meantime, Councillor Grell and Councillor Jameson both have questions.
Okay. So, Councillor Grell, you, I'll mute you. I can't do that. The host has to. And then we'll go to Councillor Jameson after that. Go ahead, Councillor Grell.
Just a couple of questions then to Community Business Services, Kim. Kim, with all the shutdowns of the parks and so on, I imagine you've been thinking the scaling to get it back up and running. Is that something that is challenging, really challenging, or is it something that can be done phased in over a couple of weeks, something of that nature? And another question would be further down, and this would be to Kim and Marnie, I guess, this idea of a small business resource group. Is that something new? Is that something that we're doing with other communities? Those are the two questions I have. Thank you. I'll mute myself and listen. Thank you.
So Vanessa, can you unmute Ms.?
Who was the question to? Sorry. Sorry, Madam Mayor, who was the question to?
The question was to Ms. Goodman.
Come on.
Can Ms. Goodman unmute herself? I can't hear you either, Vanessa.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I think we're good. All right. So with respect to the park operations and whatnot, really, typically we have a full summer student concert that would look after that. And what we anticipate doing this year, because we don't know when we're going to come out the other side of this, is as gently as we can kick the can down the road. I don't want to see us in a position as of July 1, for example, the order is lifted and we're in a position to open. So what we are anticipating doing is accepting slip rental requests for the Sealy's Bay Municipal Harbor. However, we will not permit access until such time as the order is lifted. So long as we, there's very little prep work other than a maintenance inspection prior to allowing boats to dock there. And depending on what that length of time is we can take our fee bylaw and consider prorating what that seasonal rate might be. With Kendricks Park, again, something very similar. And I think Adam and I, not to put, pardon me, the Director of Operations and I can kind of look at what are the minimum maintenance requirements that are required in our parks. I would like to do an inspection of the canteen and get it ready. We understand that the health unit is not currently doing inspections, which would typically be required for that facility, but they do have a process. So our goal is to get us as close as we can while being as mindful of the resource allocation as possible, so that if we were to arbitrarily open July 1, we're not 8 weeks behind, but maybe we're about 3 weeks behind where we need to be. So we're trying to be very careful in terms of what that looks like in terms of rolling it out. Our residents are going to be ready to go potentially, so we want to be prepared. The small business resource group that you referenced is actually a county-driven initiative. So really what it is you have senior staff from all municipalities within the county, partner municipalities, so Brockville, Gann, and Prescott. And included in those calls, it's a total of 40 some odd people. So we have the Community Development Corporation, representation from provincial and federal government. We have a whole series of resources on the line. And really what the discussion is at this point is facilitation of that survey and trying to understand at this point, what are the most immediate impacts to small and local businesses. So there is a survey that I believe closes at the end of this week. We will get the results from survey participants in our township, and we will be the ones responsible for doing the direct follow-up with our businesses. But we're kind of taking this opportunity to learn from each other and ensure that we're getting consistent messaging in terms of the programs, subsidies, et cetera, that are available to our small businesses.
I will recognize Didi. She has her hand up as well to, I believe, address the question that has already come up. Is that correct? No, your hand's up for some reason, so I'll take your hand down. I apologize. So we'll go to Councillor Fody. I think Councillor Fody had a question before we had to move him into the inner offices.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think in respect to what Councillor Maybe had alluded to, he didn't have a chance to read all this, so it's really not fair if everybody's not up to speed to continue on with further discussion. There isn't, I mean, first off, I want to thank all the staff, department heads, right up through to the acting CAO. This is a pretty comprehensive report. And to residents who feel that maybe just because they can't see what's going on in this building and maybe anticipate there is little going on in this building, this proves immensely otherwise. The staff has done a great job in preparing this township for what is happening and keeping the staff or keeping the residents up to speed and safe. I don't think they could have done much more, to be quite honest. The correlation you have, your worship, with our MPP and MP, and likewise feeding back down from them, I feel comfortable where we are, very comfortable. But because of our situation here tonight and trying to keep online with our time, because we're likely going to be timed out again, I would prefer we just take everything in this report and table it till next week. We may have a better setup.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you had heard, I'll recognize Councillor Oki in a second here. So when you were walking to the back, what I was saying was the report doesn't require action. It was an information report. So if there's questions for those who have had a chance to look at it, I think we should probably entertain them tonight. But if what Councillor maybe had asked is that it can be still on the table for next week's meeting, which is absolutely no problem. But if there is questions tonight that anybody has a burning need to ask, we have the directors here, so I think people should be able to ask those. If there was direction to be given from the report, then that's a different thing altogether, but I think it was just more of an information of what's going on at the time. So Councillor Oki, you had a question? So we're gonna unmute, there we go, okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you. Some points I'd like to put across more than ask questions. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the staff who are involved in producing the press reports and the newsletter. We've been criticized rather unfairly and rather inaccurately for not communicating. In point of fact, we have been communicating, and a number of my colleagues have been attempting to communicate as well. Bravo Zulu, as we used to say in my former profession, and keep that up. And if you need any help from me in wordsmithing or writing, I'm available for that. The next thing I would say is a bit of an update. The CRCA has closed all of their conservation areas. They had tried to keep them open so people would have a place to walk, but what they found was people weren't respecting the rules on the trails, and they were congregating in small parties in the parking lots, which is, I suspect, the reason why people wanted to close marinas as well. That may impact their revenue, which may give us some leverage to reduce our levy to them as well. Something to think about on the side. The next thing I have that will affect some of our revenue aspect as we go forward is the library wishes to continue its electronic services, but it will cease actually packaging books for people and doing curbside delivery to them. That alone will save about $10,000 a month going forward in their budget, and they are looking at other ways of reducing costs. Most of the library staff are in fact working from home at this time in this electronic program. And that concludes what I have to say and update. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oki. Before we go any further, because this is all new to all of us, I'll put the motion on the floor, and the motion is moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Council receive the administration report number AD001-20 dated April 7th, 2020 as information. So I apologize, I should have put that on the floor before we ask questions. So the other person who has their hand up at this point is Mr. Jameson, Councillor Jameson.
I'm there.
You are there.
Your Worship, I really only, I have other things to say, but I just want to echo what Councillor Fody and Councillor Olkey said regarding the quality of the work that is reflected in this report, as well as the communications that have been coming out of the township offices, I think have been excellent under unbelievable circumstances. And I know from my point of view, I've tried to push and only push township communications to others, and I know it's being well received by people in our ward here. So that's really all I have to say. It's at this stage, we review some things, that's fine, but I thought it was a good report, well laid out. And of course, I've had a little more time than others perhaps to look at it. Thank you.
So do any other department heads want to draw attention to anything specific in the report before I call the question?
Madam Mayor, the Director of Planning has her hand up.
She doesn't.
Oh,
I asked
okay.
her earlier.
Sorry.
There we go. Her hand's down. We will get the hang of this. So the motion was moved by Councillor Fody. So if you go to your iCompass screen, councillors, this is the first time that we're going to be doing this. If you go to your iCompass screen, the moving is already done. So you will see on your screen a for, against, abstained. I will ask you at this time to make your choice for, against, or abstained, and then the clerk will let us know what the vote is at the end. Is that okay, Vanessa? Oh, Councillor Deputy Mayor Lackey?
Yeah, I'm sorry. If there was any updates to come from the CAO before we vote, that would be very helpful.
So, Mr. CAO, is there additional information you'd like to add to this report?
I have to be, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I have nothing specifically to add, but just to repeat what the Mayor said, that if councillors have questions between now and next week, feel free, as always, to call the directors responsible for that. You can also call me on my cell 24/7, and to the public as well. When they call into the main office, they'll get the switchboard and an update. Press any department, get a date there, and they'll be able to leave a message. And our goal is to get back to you within 24 hours. So you'll be able to reach the director. You'll be able to ask any questions at all.
Any further questions before I call the question? Councillor Gorell, I see your hand. There we go. There we go.
On the first meeting that went sideways, I had the vote on the where it lists the participants. On this go round, I do not see that same between mute and raised hands. I don't see the voting option.
So the voting option is in the iCompass login, which should be on a separate screen. So separate from Zoom, you should be logged into iCompass in order, and if not, I can record the vote on the sheet. So if you are not logged into iCompass, I can ask you whether you are a yay or nay or an abstention, and I can mark it on the sheet, and the rest of it can be recorded. Is that kosher, Madam Clerk? Okay. So I'll call the question now. So all those who do have the dialog box up top, please choose for, against, or abstained. And if you could do that now. Okay, so Councillor Fody, are you for, against, or abstained?
I'm for.
For. Yay. And Councillor Gorell?
For.
For. Councillor Jameson, have you been able to? No, not yet. Councillor Jameson, are you a yay or a nay?
I'm a yay, and I have not been able to get on iCompass.
Okay. And Councillor or Deputy Mayor Lackey, are you a yay or a nay? Yay? Or you have a yay? Okay, so the thumbs up. Use the thumbs up or the thumbs down. That might be easier throughout all this. Councillor Maybe, are you a yay or a nay? You picked, or you've seconded. You're a yay? Yes, okay, thank you. Councillor Olkey, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay, thank you. And I'm a yay. It carries. Thank you. We'll get through this technology thing one way or the other. Okay, moving along in the meeting, the next report that's up is Finance Report number FN-010-20, the 2020 Financial Update. And this is a report. The motion is coming to the floor by Councillor Fody and seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Council received the Finance Report number FN-01-20 dated April 7th, 2020 as information, and that staff will proceed with changes as directed by Council. So now the motion is on the floor. I'll ask the Director of Finance to speak to this report, and I'll ask the CAO if once she's done with her update, if the CAO has anything to add, and then we'll have a discussion through the councillors. So if we can unmute the Director of Finance. Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, through you, Your Worship. So senior staff have gone through the budget and tried to identify operating and capital items that might be impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, as well as items that we think we could defer or eliminate through the 2020 budget to try to make up some of the lost revenue and additional expenditures that we may be facing this year. And the items are listed in the tables so that council can, as you choose, go through and decide if there's items you would like to move forward with or not. And we're open to other suggestions as well, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Director of Finance. CAO, do you have anything to add to this report before I take questions from the council?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just to go to what, refer to what Councillor Maybe mentioned, we appreciate that this is a lot of information to absorb and to digest, and we also leave an amount on there. The other point I wanted to make is that these are our recommendations, but when you go through the tables down at the end, it says other items identified by council on all of the reports. And the treasurer and I and all the senior managers appreciate that you may want more time to go through this, and we're quite prepared to answer questions this evening or answer questions for the week if that's what's decided by council. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. So I'll entertain questions from those who've had a chance to review the documentation. Councillor Maybe.
Yes, I have a couple questions. Once we get past this COVID-19 pandemic, one of the things is Rockport's going to be hot and heavy to get going. During that initial study, were there any items that came up that we were planning on doing perhaps this year? I know it's a 70,000 study, but I know that there was some other stuff that came forward from that. Is there any possibility that some of that may still have to happen before we get out of this? And then some of the other studies, as soon as we're open for business again, the one that I'd like to see maybe hit the top of the list is the Lex Road one, that study. And I know that could be in the fall. Don't really care. I just like to see it done this year. I think we put this one off 30 years now, to my recollection. And some of the other ones may not be as pressing as this particular one. That's all I have to say with this minute.
Okay, so I'll recognize Director Venditti in regards to the Rockport study. You can answer that, and then perhaps Director Gohid can speak to the Lex Road study deferral or not deferral. Go ahead, Director Venditti. We can't hear you. No. We can't hear you, Director Venditti. Do you have a mic? Maybe I'll go to Director Goheen for the time being. No, I can't hear you.
I guess I'm unmuted,
Yeah.
Your Worship.
You're
Okay.
unmuted, so we'll go to Director Goheen until we figure out what Director Venditti's doing to her computer.
Certainly the list that, thank you, Your Worship, that we put forward, and more specifically the operations related recommendations or opportunities for reduction in cost, really basically was everything that isn't awarded. We're not on contract with anything, and we're just at the very outset of. And so Lex Road certainly is at that point. But again, if it's council's direction to move forward with that and not elect to defer it, then that's the direction we'll move forward with. Certainly anything there is on the table for council to select to move forward with it, or to defer it, or to defer construction for projects that are currently in design. So the Rockport parking area and the boat ramp and the servicing study, they're all currently underway. So we could get to a point where we have the permits and the designs ready, and then council can make that decision later in the year of whether we want to pursue construction with those sorts of things. So if your direction is that that Lex maintains its status as approved and ready to go, then I'll certainly move that one to the top and get that one going.
Okay, so Vanessa, can you unmute Ms. Venditti? Doesn't show muted on my screen.
I don't have her muted.
I didn't think so.
But it does show that she's on via a telephone, not the computer audio, so I'm not sure if that's what the difference is, or...
Still can't hear you. Okay. Maybe we'll entertain some further questions in regards to this document until we can rectify the technology. Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. That's a pretty long list that we're asked to go through line by line. Is there an opportunity that we can go through it and just say, agree, don't agree with the 7 people of council, and then we get a straw vote at the end? What makes the grade and what doesn't?
So, Madam Clerk, is the motions on the floor to accept the financial report and proceed with changes as directed by council. So I think what the Deputy Mayor asking is within our right to do so. I just don't know if the straw poll within the motion is an acceptable way of doing it if we go through it line by line. From a Robert's Rules of Order point of view.
Sorry, and I believe what the Director of Finance was looking for was if we did go down through those list of 25 or 26 items, unless there's something specific like the Lex Road project or what Deputy Mayor Lackey was talking about, we could go through and approve or continue on, or because I think some of the recommendations was by Director of Operations for projects to be deferred. So if council's still in favor of that, we can kind of skip over. So if there's items that council specifically wants to talk about to either approve or disapprove or make changes, we can certainly do.
Okay, so before we go down that list, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to recognize Councillor Jameson. He had his hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think part of the challenge of going line by line is we are also, and we haven't discussed this at all yet, and it's in the report, we are not really sure of what's going to happen to our revenues with respect to all the things that are going on And in the back 9 of the year, we're going to get a better idea of some of the damage that this whole situation is going to cause commercial revenues. We can make some assumptions about a lot of things, including the casino. So my own point of view on this is the worry I have is if we as a council go line by line, it starts to become, well, you know, I like this one, so I want to do that, or somebody else has a preference for this. I believe that what we're doing here, or well, I hope we're doing, is deferring, postponing, delaying versus canceling. And I think that's, you know, giving a go-ahead versus a cancel is I do not think what we're discussing here. I would rather have the staff take as an objective look as possible about what we could do or not do, and tell us, in effect, what we need to be doing in the context, first and foremost, of what will be very challenged revenue lines for us this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. I'll recognize Councillor Maybe because he had his hand up, and then Councillor Fody.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you. My question was definitely to postpone it until we're through this pandemic and we know what our finances are. But my question was to try to make the Lexus Road maybe one of the first priorities. I don't want to see it come ahead in our time of need right now, but certainly with the list of items that are on that list, perhaps it's one of the first ones that are looked after when we have the funds and are able to go ahead confidently with our finances of the community.
So before I recognize Councillor Fody, just to parenthesize what we're doing here, these are recommendations for deferral, not canceling. Director of Finance, can you clarify that for sure, just so that we're all on the same page?
Hi, through your worship. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I mean, obviously we didn't have a lot of time to put these lists together, but there is kind of a mixture of things here. For example, I listed the penalties and interest revenue from property taxes. Well, we really don't know the full impact of that yet, and we probably won't for a bit of time. So that's why some of these line items don't actually have a new or proposed budget amount. I think the key here is that we are looking at it, we are thinking about it, we recognize that we are going to be losing revenue, and we've tried to identify those areas for you. So we're just hoping that this will give council a start in terms of what decisions they may want to make, but I do agree it might make sense to wait on making decisions tonight because we are still early into this.
Okay, so I'll recognize Councillor Fody, and then I'll entertain possibly changing the motion as it, amending the motion as it sits.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think one thing that maybe we overlooked here, Councillor maybe had asked right from the get-go that he had not reviewed this at all. So we shouldn't be moving anything forward on a line by line or anything else.
Okay.
The point I want to make is thank you to our Director of Planning and the whole Planning Department, or I should say the Finance Department, excuse me, on this detailed report. I feel much like Councillor Jameson. I don't want to move one single item anywhere forward till we know where we stand financially. We have got no idea what's coming down with this COVID-19 or where we're going to stand financially. I don't want to move anything forward. If this whole package means to defer, I'm all in. But to cherry pick out of it, I'm out.
Okay. Marnie, are you able to join the call now or no, you're still having trouble? Okay, I'll leave. Oh, I can hear you now.
Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sounds like I joined as another person.
Okay, so would you like to speak to the question long ago?
Sure. So all I wanted to clarify was that the Rockport study that's listed on there isn't listed for the purposes of deferring it or delaying it. We are so far down the process right now. We need to continue with where we're at. What I meant was that the $70,000 was budgeted for 2020, and we had spent a portion of that in 2019 with the initiation of the study, so that we can we probably don't need the full allocation that's in the budget for this year. So some of those funds could be seen as funds that won't need to be spent this year. That's just the clarification I wanted to provide.
Thank you, Director Venditti. Councillor Oki, you have a question?
Yes, not so much a question, perhaps as an observation and maybe some other inputs. I was looking at the tax arrears, and I think that's a pretty stark indicator of what might be ahead. There may have been other financial things happening before the COVID-19, but apparently that statement says we're 34% behind where we were last year, or the arrears are greater than last year. And that will not be easy for people to make up. So yes, defer and consider what revenue we might have and what we might not have. In looking at other things, the federal offer of $2,000 a month, if people can sign into it, equates to $12.50 an hour for a 40-hour week. It's starvation wages, and it's really bridge financing till people get to EI. And we have a lot of workers and people in our township who do odd jobs, and they're not really linked to government programs. This could become really serious for us on a humanitarian level. Just something to keep in the back of the mind as we talk about going forward. Thank you.
Okay. So based on the motion as it was presented, Councillor Fody moved and seconded by Councillor Maybe. The motion reads that Council received Finance Report number FN-010-20 dated April 7th, 2020 as information. And then the secondary piece is that staff proceed with the changes as directed by Council. So I would entertain an amendment to remove that last piece of the motion, which would just be receiving it as information, and then if we wanted to bring a motion forward at the next council to do anything specific, we could do that. So Deputy Mayor, is that you making the amendment, moving the amendment? And do I have a seconder for that amendment? I have Councillor Olkey. Okay, so that's removing. So Deputy Mayor Lackey. Second. Councillor Olkey. Okay, so I'll ask for a motion, or sorry, the motion is to remove and that staff proceed with the changes as directed by council. I'll call the question on, Councillor Gorell, you have something to add?
Yes, questions.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I had my hand up there for quite a while.
I apologize.
Through you to Director of Finance, the first graph that we see, the approved budget and so on. So the idea would be that even though some of those are blank, there are potential areas. Is that how I am to read that? Because $127,000 reduction, which is currently where it sits, is pretty paltry on a $10 million budget. So if that's not where we're going, if that could be increased, that would be a good thing. Secondly, I understand that this report primarily is dealing with the potential hit of the casino revenues and so on, which is a very forthright argument at this point in time in that they're shut down. So I see that, and correct me if I'm wrong at any time here, but I see that when we move to the second graph, what we're doing is we're trying to establish $750,000 coming off of the capital budget so that we can relieve the reserve funds. Is so far of my thinking correct? Because I don't mind looking this thing over, and I don't mind any of the issues in deferral on the capital side. I think that's all wise, every one of them. However, I still was not quite understanding that first graph, the operating budget, because as I say, if that's the best we can do, that's pretty sad. And I just want to make the final comment. In my opinion, and I'm at home, I watch a lot of news, and good or bad, the fact is, Quebec Quebec is going to last through the end of April, just for their peak in the hospital situations. So it kind of tells us that I think it would be naive to think that things are getting back to normal for 3 months. So we really have to seriously look at this operating budget. We did this 127,000, and I believe now that that can be increased substantially. We need maybe phase 1 and phase 2. We need to be prepared. We can't sit here a month from now and go, geez, I guess we'd better do some more chopping. The deferral on the capital is just fine by me. And again, my understanding is that's to help out with our perception that, and a good perception it is, that the casino revenue is going to be challenged. I guess that's it. And thank you. I'll look for an answer there from Director.
Okay,
Thank you.
I will, the Director of Finance, would you like to speak to that? And then I'll recognize Councillor Jameson and then Deputy Mayor Laffey.
Hi, so can you hear me through your worship?
We can, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Gorell, if the table is a little confusing. The first 2 lines, if you notice, was an estimate in what we think could be the reduction in the casino revenue. Obviously, that's just a guess. Those 2 first lines net out, because what I did was, if we're going to lose a portion of the casino revenue, then I'm assuming I'm thinking we'll need to reduce our transfers to reserve funds. So that those 2 lines net out to try to offset that reduction in revenue. Then we would lower what we would transfer to the reserve fund. So then that capital table was, again, yes, trying to offset those transfers. If we don't have the money coming in, then we don't have the money to take out and fund those capital projects. Those are projects that were identified that we could defer. When you go down that list, so number 3, for example, there was a mention that the OMPF, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, will be decreasing, but I have no indication at all how much that will decrease, and it doesn't look like it's going to be hugely significant. But again, because it was mentioned, I wanted to just note it in that table for you so you're aware of it, but that's why I don't actually have a new budget amount or what the impact is for the budget. And then you can see that we've tried to come up with what we think we could save, like training and development, number 5. So the original budget was 103,000. Maybe we can bring it down to 65. That's a savings of 38,200. That's just a number that we've put together here. Again, the council can choose to change that number. And so when you go down the list, that's really what we did, is we've tried to identify either areas where we know there's going to be an impact or areas where we think we can save on the expense side. And yes, unfortunately right now, the total is 127,000. That's kind of what we've come up with. A lot of those items, if they're funded by reserve funds, like those studies, they don't actually affect our bottom line because they're coming out of reserve fund. So those actually won't impact the bottom line for the operating budget. Definitely staff can continue to work to try to figure out, because I think what we're going to be doing is also having to look at levels of service. And that will affect the expenses as well, and where we need to look at cutting.
Madam Director, can I make a point of clarification?
If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so just to further just clarify, in my own mind, not for Councillor Gorell, but the revenue of the 1.5 million that is generally expected comes into our operating budget, and then from the operating budget we make those transfers to capital reserves, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So the savings, even though it looks like on the operating side, it's only 127,000, it's actually more than that as a whole, because even though we're reducing the stuff to capital reserves, that's still included in the, let's say, $10 million worth of the operating budget. So we're almost $1 million just based on what your suggestions are, correct?
Yes, so the 750,000 plus the 127 is the total expenditure reduction, and then the revenue is also reducing.
Okay, so not to beleaguer the point that Councillor Gorell is trying to make, but that, total, this is closer to $1 million in change to our operating budget, but that we still may need to sharpen the pencil, if you will, to find further reductions depending on how our incomes are, I shouldn't say income, revenues from taxation and other sources are affected. So I will recognize Councillor Jameson and then Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just speaking primarily in support of Councillor Gorell's point, but understanding from the Director of Finance that this is moving in quite a dramatic direction, both revenue and expense. My question is, by not giving staff direction about holding the line or deferring or whatever, are we going to go away and have expenditures carry on as they have been? Or is it going to be clear without emotion that we must move into a very severe review of all expenditures, capital, and operations, and begin to act in that manner effective immediately tomorrow? And I think I'm answering my own question, or it's almost rhetorical, because I know that is the way staff is thinking. But how do we formalize this focus on getting things down? The direction being hit the pause button and then hit it again. I don't know how that's expressed as emotion, but I think we're all in the same space trying to keep things in line, listening to staff as well as councillors. Thank you.
So before I recognize Deputy Mayor, I might just make a point of clarification that by removing this piece, so there's an amendment on the floor right now. We're speaking to that amendment, that we would be removing the staff proceed with changes as directed by council. Having said that, we have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday where we could provide concrete direction at that time based on this report, or ask for further information to come forward for next week's meeting. Is that sufficient to answer your question, Councillor Jameson? Yes? Okay. Okay, Deputy Mayor Lackey, do you have to speak to the amendment or otherwise?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you. We've asked for this meeting for updates. We didn't really expect to make decisions as community of the whole. We do that after the sober second thought at council. I'm sorry, I have an echo. We have a lot of issues that I'm sure well, first and foremost, our director of our treasurer brought us a great report. I respect it fully. We're going to have reduced gas tax since we have people out driving around buying fuel, even though the fuel prices are low. Services, and if we can repurpose them, if we can reduce time, those are all other things. I mean, the operating is what affects our taxpayer. We can reduce capital because of revenues coming in from the casino, from the province, from all of those people. But at the end of the day, the taxpayer who has lost their jobs are the ones that are footing the bill. And we need to reduce our operating because that's what the taxpayer pays for. So we seriously need to sit back and figure out where we can cut some fat.
So based on the amendment that's on the floor, removing that staff proceed with the changes as directed by council, I think that based on the discussion that we're comfortable with the information being brought forward, but that the decision would be entertained at a later meeting, whether it be next week or subsequent week meeting. So I will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to remove and that staff proceed with the changes as directed by council, please signify with a yay or a nay. So I've got Jameson as a yay. I've got Terry as a yay. I've got Lackey, maybe. And Grell, are you a positive, a yay, or an A? And Councillor Olkey. Where have I lost Councillor Olkey to? Did Councillor Olkey leave the meeting? Oh, heavens. Madam Clerk, has Councillor Olkey left the meeting?
I'm on here.
I can make it an abstention for the time being as he's left the room. And we'll try to get a hold of him. So the motion for the amendment carries. So the motion now reads, moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Council receive finance report number FN-010-20 dated April 7th, 2020 as information. Any further discussion on the motion as presented? Seeing none, I will call the question. I'll ask